It's Tuesday, April 12th, 2022. I'm Ashley Pollard here for today's edition of Tuesday Talk, where we review common real estate and mortgage related topics. Today's topic is the Appraisal Gap Strategy. Now, this I've talked about twice already this week, and I wanted to make sure I got a video in on it. So lenders, when we're seeking mortgage financing, mortgage lenders are only going to loan on what a property is worth. And in order to figure out what the property is worth, the appraiser comes out and does the appraisal. If you don't remember appraisals, go back to my YouTube channel or my Instagram or my Facebook and watch the video on appraisals. So what happens when you get your appraisal back and the appraised value is less than what you offered to pay for that property? So there's many options that we have, and we'll talk about all the options. But today we're focusing solely on the appraisal gap strategy. So what does that mean? If you provide appraisal gap coverage, you are promising the seller that whatever the house appraises for, if it is not what I already offered to pay you, I will bring that difference to closing. I will take that cash, whatever the difference is, and bring it to closing. So let's use an example that you're under contract for $420,000. Your appraisal comes in only at $400,000. So you have a $20,000 gap that exists. So if you offer to the seller to cover the full appraisal gap, then that means that $20,000 that exists as a gap, you're going to bring that on top of your down payment, on top of the closing costs that you already expected to pay. Now, some people might say, well, that's crazy. Why would I offer anybody, an extra $20K on a house if it's not worth that? Well, in this market that we've been in for 2+ years now, there's not a lot of properties that are available, but there are a lot of buyers who are seeking to purchase their first home, second home, investment home, or whatever. So when you are going up against 10, 20, 30 people every time, you start to get a little bit creative and figure out strategies that will help you win if your goal really is to purchase a property. So although it might sound like an absurd option, it's something that I tell all of my buyers. It's something that buyers are finding much success in doing. And if you're in financial position to do that, and it's a property that you really want, well, you have to figure out, if the seller lays out all contracts next to each other, somebody's got to be different. You have to differentiate yourself amongst the competition. So what are you going to offer to the seller that's going to have them actually go move forward with your contract and not someone else's? So that's the first example, is covering the entire gap. Now, you can either do that by bringing the whole $20,000 to closing, or if you're putting down a higher down payment, let's say your down payment is 10% or 20%, you can talk to your lender about restructuring your down payment. And instead of putting 20% down, maybe you only put down 10%. And the rest of that 10%, you're going to swing over to cover that appraisal gap now. So you're not going to have to bring much, if any, extra money to closing other than what you were already planning to bring for down payment and closing costs. This is something that is a really good option if you have strong finances and extra cash reserves. So definitely speak to myself or your lender about what that would look like for you. Now, the other option is maybe you don't cover the whole appraisal gap. Maybe you only cover part of it. So in this example where we are under contract for $420,000, but the house appraised for $400,000, let's say you offer to the seller, I'll pay you an extra $10,000 if the house doesn't appraise. Well, now that means that the seller has to come down 10 and you have to come up 10, and you'll meet in the middle and you'll pay the seller $410,000. So you'll bring your down payment and closing costs to closing, and then you'll also bring that extra $10,000 either in cash or as a result of restructuring your loan so that you're putting less down payment and more towards your appraisal gap. Now, this has to be believable. You can't just tell a seller, oh yeah, I'm offering you $75,000 over asking, I'll pay the difference. This is something that is written in your contract from the beginning, from the time that you're in attorney review. This is not something that on appraisal day, you just show up and you tell the seller some numbers that you feel confident in. So before you even get to the appraisal, this is already going to be determined on what you are willing to do for your appraisal gap. Now, in order to make this offer seem more believable, you should be submitting not only your pre-approval, but also proof of funds that show you can pay that gap. So in our example of being under contract at $420,000 with a house that's only worth $400,000, you should show your bank account where you've got not only your appraisal gap money, but you've got your closing cost money and your down payment money. So you're showing the seller $50K, $60K, $70K, whatever it is, and you're saying, look, I'm really serious about this property. I know 12 other people have offered, but look, I got the money right here. It's waiting. We're ready to go. I've offered you money to cover the appraisal gap, and this is my proof in showing you that I have that available to actually do, and that I'm not going to flake and, figure out a way to get out of the contract later. Again, it might sound absurd. It might sound like, wow, that's a lot of money for just a property, but we're talking about generational wealth here. We're talking about ownership here. We're talking about changing the future for your family. So again, this is not for everybody, but you have to differentiate yourself between the other competition if you do want to move forward in purchasing a property in a hot seller's market. So that is the appraisal gap strategy. If you have any questions on it, please reach out to me. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in to today's Tuesday Talk, and I will see you next Tuesday. Enjoy the weather today.